Bam.
Hello, I'm Ruta Lee, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, we're just going to have some fun, have a conversation. I wanted to ask you, this is a different question, but this will go to your Lithuanian roots. I found out recently that I've got Jewish heritage, and in the big blob of places that I'm from, Lithuania, Latvia, the Baltics.
Uh-huh.
And so I have no tie to that place at all. So am I from there? Can you become from there? Could I, and so it's always a weird question, like, where do you belong to, right? Really, I'm a Californian and multi-generation, but maybe I have this Lithuanian sense about me because we all come from a similar place.
Well, I too am an American and proud of it, an adopted one because I was born in Canada, of Lithuanian parents. So that really makes me a multinational person.
Right.
And I love it because I, of course, I'm so proud of being an American. And I was the first to become an American in my family. My mother and father were on a Lithuanian visa. And even though they had lived in Canada for some 35 years, they were still on a Lithuanian visa. And after the big one, and that no, you're too young.
I'm too young.
You're too young. But the big war, the one your father was in, that was taking up, that after the war, all of the visas were being taken up by displaced persons. And so I learned a lot about Lithuania and those poor, beleaguered Baltic countries, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania. They were all under the heel of the communist boot. And they suffered for 70 years under that frigging system.
Right.
And that's the best I can call it. God, I'm so nervous about this, Pete, that so many of our young people think that socialism is such a wonderful step. You know what it's a step up to? The first wonderful rung of the communist ladder.
Yeah.
And it fails. It fails terribly, no matter where it is. And yet we keep thinking, oh, but it reads well on paper.
Yeah. I'm in the world where we talk about things that brief well. And yet when I meet people who have come here from somewhere else, they all say, you guys don't get how great it is here. Like I met this, I had her on my show Popping the Bubble was a technology show. And there was this Brazilian girl, and she's like, I'm a Brazilian girl in Brazil, but here I can be a CEO. So she's like, politically, I don't care. I just want my chance. And if I want a chance, I've got to do it here. So she's like, left, right, I don't care about that. I can be a woman. I can be in charge. I can be the boss here. And that's something that unless you've not had that, unless your grandparents or parents have told you what it was like, you just have no idea.
Absolutely. And of course, America is the only place that the American dream really can take place, where by working hard, keeping your nose to the grindstone, saving your money, not blowing it off everywhere, you can build miracles.
Yeah.
You can formulate companies and make them run. And everything can be done with hard work, a little trust in the power bigger than yourself, and but trust that power comes through you, and you can do good things in the world, and especially if you're doing things that help other people along the way.
It's easy to look at you and say, oh, Ruta's got it easy. She's got this big fancy house and all these things, but it does take time to go from a grandmother who barely gets here, barely survives once she does get here because she'd been through everything. And so you can't look at the end product. It's like when people look at someone like Michael Jordan or anybody who's done all those things, and you finish the work. It's easy to judge that and say, oh, it was easy, but it's not easy for anybody. And not everybody has to kill the dragons, whatever's in front of them.
My big fancy house came because my mother and father had such a heavy, strong work ethic that they passed on to me. And they came to first Canada, then the United States. Well, they came to the United States with a few dollars because they had earned enough and saved enough to buy some land and property and whatnot in Canada, which they sold to come here. But this house would not have been anywhere even within my reach when I was making what I would call pretty big dollars, not compared to what the kids are making now at $1 million a show. Think about that. If I made $10,000 of a week or 2 weeks, wow, that was huge money to me. And I had to save a lot of it to be able to live the way I do now. And I earned it. My parents earned it. They taught me how to earn it. What they left me, I built on. And God love them. Hard work is what it is. Hard work and saving your dollars, It's so easy in this buy now, pay later environment that we have all grown up in to remember that you may not be able to pay it tomorrow. What if you lose your job? What if you get hit by a bus? What if something happens?
It's always
be
happens.
Prepared for it. You have to be somewhat prepared. And from what I gather, most of us are living very much hand to mouth. And don't have but that week's or that month's wages to live on. Scary.
Yeah, I mean, you in your book, you talk about how you bought property almost instantly once you had some money, and then next thing you know, you're having a Palm Springs house. But this is when you were working as an actor, and so you had this money, but you knew to think ahead, and it's hard for and in our case, I'm a young person compared to you, but even people who are younger than us. So I was talking to on Monday. I was at my high school. I go back every year. I've done it for 20 years.
Oh, how nice.
And I talk to the seniors. And one of the things I tell them is like, go read this. There's a book called I'll Teach You to Be Rich. Not like fabulously wealthy, but like, here are the rules. Here are the kind of credit cards you get. Here are the kind of bank accounts you set up. All this stuff. It is right there. It is not a get rich.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because it is not taught in school. Home ec or shop or whatever. We don't know how to write checks.
How to run a house.
Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about budgets in school. Nobody talks about getting loans and paying them. That's essential to living in the United States or anywhere in the world.
It is.
And yet it's not being taught in our schools. I don't understand it.
So when you look at your background, all the things you've done, I actually have two questions, and I think they'll weave together in one long answer for you. But when you go to a party and someone doesn't know who you are, what is it that you tell them that you do? Because you don't just do one thing, and you've done so many things. So what do you say that you do? And then when did you feel like, I can do this, whether it's acting or whatever it is, where you're like you're always aware that money is a problem, but like, when did you like, I'm free. I can be a professional. I can work. I'll make money. I'll be all right. When did you get to that point?
I think I came out of my mother's womb knowing that.
Okay.
Because I have never done anything but be on stage, center stage, whether I'm on a stage or not. From the time I was a child, I think I took command of a room or a space or an audience from the time I was a child. My mother had faith in me. She thought I was Lithuania's answer to Shirley Temple. And she didn't know anything about theater in New York, where, of course, all stage lies. But she did know about movies because she saw, as I said, Shirley Temple in the movies. She said, oh, my daughter can do that, And so she encouraged me to always work and do. My kindergarten teacher is the one that went to my mom and said, Mary, your daughter is different than all of the children that come through my classes in kindergarten. Give her dancing lessons, give her music lessons, give her something, because she stands out from the kids. And it's not that I was pretty or anything. I was an ugly little girl as far as I'm concerned, But then when we came to Hollywood and I started taking a few lessons and working in little theater and getting a few jobs in television, wow, that was really something. And then my first job was Seven Brides for Seven Brothers in the movies. I mean, what an auspicious beginning that was. And those days, Pete, we worked 6 days a week.
Right.
That was not the 2-day weekend. That was the 6 days a week work. And it was a great growing up period for me.
Yeah.
And then when I started making a few dollars, I always put it aside. And the first thing that I bought with my money, the very first thing that I spent money on was a beautiful little toy poodle that I'd wanted all my life. But the only thing that made sense was to buy land.
Yeah.
And I did. And I bought a piece of property that I had to have my mother's signature on because I was 16 and not old enough to buy property. I bought it for $1,500, which to me was phenomenally big money.
Right.
And my last offer that I turned down for that same piece of land was $400,000.
Yeah.
So listen, folks, you'll never go wrong unless you buy under the Brooklyn Bridge. You won't go wrong with property.
Yeah.
You just seem to always come out okay with land or a house or whatever.
And so when someone meets you, what do you tell them you do for a living?
Oh, that was your question.
Yeah. Well, that you answered the other part, but it was 2-part. So
if someone really doesn't know who I am, it's amazing how many people do know that I'm in the business. They know me from somewhere, you know. Yeah. They may not know me by name necessarily, but they know they've seen me. Well, Lord knows, if you haven't seen me through your toes on the night shows, you know, whether it's Johnny Carson or whether it's daytime in the soaps or daytime on anything.
Yeah.
I usually say I am a performer. Yeah. I'm an actress. Oh, really? What have you done? Well, then you name a few things. Oh, were you in? Oh, I know you.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that kind of happens.
Yeah.
And it's awfully nice. When you start making a few dollars in the industry, it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
I mean, I always said that the best thing in the world is to be on a stage, to get laughter and applause and tears going with you when you're on a live stage, and then to get a standing ovation at the end of the show. That is a little bit of heaven that everybody in the business needs to experience and wants to experience. And then after that, to get a check at the end of the week, wow.
Yeah.
That's really adding the cherry on the pudding. You know, it's awfully,
right.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So you're a performer, but you know, among the things that you've done that have been most impactful, wouldn't you say that your philanthropy work or something else has been more important to you?
Oh, absolutely. And it's what I've spent the most time at. Mm-hmm. Debbie Reynolds, my sister in charity, and my beloved sister, and we were sisters by choice rather than blood, which made us really sisters. And I were the head mothers of an organization called the Thalians.
Right.
And the Thalians were a group of young Hollywood types that got tired of being called hard drinking, pot smoking asses that had nothing to contribute to society, and said, you know, we all hang out and have drinks and sing around the piano and do stuff. Why don't we put a show together and put it on a stage somewhere and sell tickets and raise money for a charity? And so they did. And two of their original members were Jane Mansfield and Mamie Van Dorn.
Wow. Talk
about brassiere sizes. Holy mackerel. Anyway, we sent them out. I say we because I came in about 5 years later. They sent them out to look for a good charity, and they came back to the next meeting and said, oh, all the good diseases have already been taken. But they had found a man, a wonderful doctor that was dealing with emotionally disturbed children. And he described those kids as rotten apples in a barrel, that if you don't take out the rotten apple and fix it, that it will infect the entire barrel, therefore the community or the city or the country that they live in. And so we took on the plight of the emotionally disturbed child and built the first building that went in at the huge Cedars-Sinai complex here in Los Angeles. And 18 years later, we opened the doors to our clinic, and it was for not just emotionally disturbed children, but for mental health. It was Hollywood for mental health, because we Hollywood types were shining into a dark abyss, into that closet that everybody put mental illness in, and shining a Klieg light, a Hollywood spotlight on it, hoping to bring them into the light of healing. And we opened our clinic for pediatric through geriatric care. And we handled this for many, many years. And then a friend came to me one day, some 50 years later, and said, you guys are doing such a good job with your Thalians Community Mental Health Center, but you're missing the boat on something. And I said, what is that? He said, you're not doing anything about our returning veterans, those beautiful young people that are willing to put their lives on the line in every hellhole in the world we send them to. And yet they come back to the United States and are not necessarily all treated to the best that America has to offer, which they certainly deserve. And sometimes they fall through the cracks, and we find them homeless and jobless, and et cetera, et cetera. So we changed our focus, and we are now focused solely on Operation Mend, which is at UCLA, and we're housed in the Ronald Reagan building. And Operation Mend heals the broken and fractured bodies of our returning vets, and we Thalians are focused on healing the broken and fractured mind of our returning vets, the mind and spirit. And we do events that are not as big as they used to be because it's just too expensive. So there are smaller events, and we have great stars. And I don't know, when does this play?
It's right now. We're live.
Oh, we're live. Excuse me. Well, this coming Saturday, December 2nd. Oh, Pete, we're honoring probably one of the most deserving stars ever.
That's right.
Especially in our field. And who am I talking about but the wonderful Gary Sinise?
Yes.
Not only is he a great star in film and television, but he is a star in philanthropy when it comes to our veterans. And he is our honoree. We're honoring him. And your good friend, Rich Little, is going to come in from Vegas to perform. And we are raising dollars left, right, and sideways. Everybody is so thrilled that we're honoring Gary Sinise. And so if anybody is of a mind to, just go to the Thalians, THALIANS.org, and you can figure out how to get a ticket to come to our event. Cheap it's not, but it's worth it, because look at the good that we're doing with it. We are helping our returning veterans.
So everybody look down below. You'll see the link for the Thalians if you don't know how to spell it. But just type in Thalians and it'll come up. It's pretty straightforward. And for sure, even if you can't go, donate or whatever.
Oh, yes.
And thank you for doing what you do, because it's part of my thing. My buddy Scott Husing, he's a best-selling author. He and I are trying to work on the veteran suicide thing.
Well, this is all part of it.
We drive across country every year trying to raise money, and people right in the middle of COVID, one of his friends died, and his family said, "Hey, come out and do the eulogy." And he's like, "Pete, I'm going to ride my motorcycle across the country, all the way from Temecula to South Carolina." And I said, "You're not doing that alone. You go ride on your bike and you go on your walkabout, but I'm going to be behind you in my truck." And this turned into this crazy, we've done it 4 years now, event where all people come out, and it's a lot of veterans, but people poured out, even in spite of COVID.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and they wanted to help. And it's like, you go to them and they're like, "Well, you came here to wherever part of Alabama, Texas, New Mexico." We go across the southern states, and people were desperate to help, desperate to stick money in their pockets.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Well, this time of year, let's face it, every one of us is being begged by great worthy charities.
Right.
And they're wonderful people that double the monies and so on and so forth. All I can say about the whole thing is that we, as Americans, owe a great debt to the beautiful young men and women that are willing to give up their lives for us, and yet we are not willing to give up with a few dollars to help them when they return and they need the help. And Thalians are so willing to give their time, their talent, their money into helping our veterans. And I'm hoping that you kind of put that as one of the first things in your mind and out of your pocketbook. And that is that they're willing to die for me. I don't know how many people are that we can say that about in every other charity. So that's why I say ours is important.
And we seem to keep wanting to send people places. So there's not a lack of new people coming back with a variety of damage. And I'll just, from my own, I've been on 1,000 combat patrols. You don't go on a combat patrol and not lose a little bit of you in some way. Whether
You've got
it's a piece of meniscus or a piece of your soul, wherever. It's just, you're constantly having things taken from your well-being all the time.
And think about some of our beautiful young men and women who come back maimed and having to have our friend Joey Polk, who was like almost like the poster boy for us because of the things that he's been through. He's had probably 140 surgeries on his face and his hands trying to pull him back together because he had a landmine, right? Now, think of the help that we were able to give him mentally as well. You don't come out of something like this maimed and injured and ugly in your own mind to the world without some sort of psychological problems that go with it. And I'm so happy that he comes forward every year to help us out and kind of makes a joke out of himself. He looks out at our Beverly Hills, Hollywood star crowd and said, I'm so glad to be talking to a group of people that have had more facelifts than I had.
It's funny. I read that in your book and it made me laugh. And we all know someone like that, like a guy that I know had both of his arms taken off when an RPG went through his vehicle. There's any number of guys that have had horrible, horrible burns. Next week on the show, I'm going to have a guy named Josh Montz. He was shot and killed in Iraq. He was dead for over 12 minutes and they brought him back. Here's the crazy thing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, he's still with us, right? But he, when he got out of the army, they're like, you're not 100% disabled. Like, he was dead. How much more disabled can you be? And because he was down for so long, how he sees the world has changed. He's had to deal with a lot of things. And it doesn't, and so even as you get better, you have to, because I can speak from my own personal experience. You know, I have controlled, but I have suicidal ideation every day. I want to die every day, right? But I have the tools because other people have helped me. We are a stubborn lot to get help for. I lost my brother, veteran, to suicide. And so like we're all struggling trying to pull these things together. And so when we have help from the Thalians or from any of the organizations that do, there's so many of them, it's definitely appreciated. And I always wonder, like, how are we making progress? And I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of attention. And folks like the Thalians, you guys are invaluable because you bring a big shining, that Klieg light, and you're like, hey, look, here's where help is at.
You know, and mental illness was for so many years the hidden disease.
Right.
You know, you kicked it aside, or like I said, into the closet, into some dark hole, and you didn't talk about the member of the family that was mentally ill, you know.
Yes.
And nobody asks for it. It happens.
Right.
And basically, we were dealing an awful lot at the Thalian Clinic with people who did it to themselves, who took drugs and did all of this. And this is what woke me up to the fact. And I said, you know, our returning veterans didn't ask for this crap to happen to them. They didn't do it to themselves. They did it standing up for what they believed in and standing up for us who are at home in America, not in their place. And they deserve the best that we can give them. They deserve everything. And so that's when we changed our focus and said, we're going to deal solely with this now. And I'm very proud of Operation Mend and what it does. and I'm proud of our association with it.
I want to bring it back to Gary Sinise for a minute, because he built a home. His organization built a home for a guy named Josue Barone. He's from LA. He was a kid living in a Mexican gang-filled city here in LA, and he lost his entire leg in a bomb. Right, so he is down at Camp Pendleton with his friends later on. He's not in the Marines anymore, but they're going to go run up something called First Sergeant's Hill, which, as you can imagine, it's not a gentle run, and he doesn't have like a bendable leg. He has basically like a unipod. Right?
Yeah.
And so he's kind of hipping it up, and then finally he's like, that's not working. And so he gets to the top of this thing on his 2 hands and his 1 foot, and he's just hopping, just about crawling on his knees.
God bless him.
He's also missing an eye. So he looks up, and he's got a globe and anchor in his eye, right? And like, this is the Marine Corps like thing. How can you not be behind this? What's going to stop this person? He's a leg and I don't care. I am a hard ass, and I'm going to go out and do things. And so Gary's organization, this goes to why you guys want to recognize him. He gives people like a home that's built for them, so that they can operate as normally as possible. So he's not bound by this service. He's launched by it. It makes me emotional when I think about my friend Josue and Gary's work.
I don't blame you. That is so fabulous. But it's so nice, because so many lovely people that we know are supporting this.
Yes.
My friend Jackie Autry, Jean Autry's widow,
Right,
has done something very nice. She sent a check for $25,000 that we will get every year in perpetuity.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
As long as the Jean Autry fund lasts,
Right,
and that's going to be going on forever, because Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer will keep it going. Ka-ching, ka-ching, every time it's played, you know.
Yeah.
Alex Trebek sees to it that I get a nice sizable check every year in his beautiful widow sends me, the money from Alex. It's awfully nice when good people come forward and do for us. I'm thrilled to death, and I'm hoping y'all who have time might just come to the Brentwood Country Club, where we're having our big event, and take part in supporting this great cause of the Thalians, and especially the fact that we do it all for our returning veterans, and through the loving hands of someone like Gary Sinise that we will honor.
I love it. It's one of the best things about this show is you get to meet all these wonderful people doing wonderful things. And sure, look, like, Frank Sinatra, and you've been in the same room as Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, that stuff's all great, but that's a long time ago. But here's what really matters: here's where you're making an impact. And sure, we could talk about old time Hollywood stories, and people would listen to that. But I'm much more interested in what you're doing now, and how you and your peers are all doing something that you frankly don't have to do. You could have quit a long time ago.
Oh Lord, there are times when it's really hard work.
Yeah,
parting people with their money.
Can I say this? I got to jump in. One of the mottos that I told Scott, it's 110. He's on his motorcycle, no windscreen. He is barbecuing. I'm hot in the truck, and I get air conditioning
and getting bugs in your teeth.
Oh my God, it's all hard. And he's like, man, this is just horrible. And I'm like, yeah, but charity's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah,
if these problems were solvable, they'd be solved. Right?
How right you are.
It does take you willing to work hard, and I appreciate you doing that. So I had to say that, because it's not supposed to be easy.
Thank you, Pete. It's been golly, I've been doing it 70 years at least.
Yeah, so you're just getting started.
And I keep saying, every year I keep saying, oh my God, I can't do this again. I just can't do this again. And then somebody will walk up to me and tap me on the shoulder and say, God bless you for the Thalians. You don't know what you did for my son, or for my little girl, or for, a parent. But now it's all to do with our veterans. And when I get a Joey Polk or anybody in our business put their arm around me, and sometimes it's a false arm that comes around me, and I get a kiss from lips that are not necessarily soft and beautiful, because they've been injured and they're glued together, and I get that kind of a thank you from somebody, I take a deep breath and say, thank you, God, for the energy and the wherewithal to just keep doing this. because somebody has to do it. And those kids that have been injured can't do it for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's up to us that got to sit home on our fat asses and didn't have to go pick up a bomb somewhere, you know.
Yeah. And whenever I get approached by a veteran to do something, I'm just like, okay, all right, let's do it. You know?
Yeah.
And they've got to do their share of the work, but yeah, let's figure out how to help someone, because if you one at a time, you're helping people.
Yeah.
You know? I wanted to get into your because when I asked you earlier, like, what do you do? I'm a performer. Like, yeah, but you also know all of like the presidents of Lithuania, and you're this hyper important person, and now a citizen. You know, so you're not just a performer. You're someone who works in charity, and also you've built this incredible bridge back to your homeland.
To Lithuania, yes, it's interesting. I heard about Lithuania, of course, as a child growing up. It was my first language, actually, right. Lithuanian. And Lithuanian was spoken at home. And I'm fairly fluent in it, which comes in so handy, of course.
All the time, every day.
But I have always had a strong feeling about Lithuania. And I was asked years ago, and therefore it's a miracle that the communists ever let me in to Soviet Lithuania or Russia when I went, because I made so many Voice of America broadcasts condemning communism. And it's astounding that they let me in.
Yeah.
But that story, everybody has to read my book.
Yeah,
that story is in it, about how I got to go. How Khrushchev gave me permission to go to Lithuania. It is a remarkable story. But they listened to me. The Lithuanians who had shortwave radio hidden, because it was against the law to have them, to listen to any of these broadcasts from anywhere other than the Soviet Union. They heard about me. Lithuanians heard about me. They knew that I was beginning to become a little bit of a known personality, you know, a starlet and everything else in Hollywood. And Hollywood, of course, is a name that everybody knows in deepest, darkest Africa. They know from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I always cared about Lithuania, and I followed it, and then eventually went there and was received beautifully, and continued to have this strong relationship. And the one of the first beautiful presidents that I got to know was Valdas Adamkus. And there's a great story, because he and his family, when he was a child, literally walked across Lithuania to get out when they knew the Russians were coming, because that meant communism. The Russians are beautiful people. The communists suck.
Yeah.
Anyway, the poor family literally walked across and went into internment camps, lots of different places in Germany, etc., and wound up through some kind soul in Chicago, where he did his growing up and got work and educated himself, and went back to Lithuania wanting to do something good, and became president of Lithuania.
Wow.
And he gave me the highest honors that Lithuania has for a civilian. And I went to Lithuania and was received at a beautiful reception in the Lithuanian White House, which had once been a Russian camp for soldiers. And you can imagine what condition that was in when Lithuania took it over.
Yeah.
And again, I have to salute the young men and women that were killed by Russian guns or run over by Russian tanks that fought for liberating those countries, you know, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, especially Lithuania. And then just recently, of course, I had a wonderful reception for Valdas Adamkus when he was here at the house in LA, in this very room that we're sitting. He and his wonderful wife were here, and I had a party for about 50 or 70 people.
Right. And
it was sensational. And then just about 2 months ago, or a month ago, I can't even remember, 2 months ago now, the current president of Lithuania was here visiting, and his name is Nauseda, Gitanas Nauseda. And Nauseda is the maiden name of Anne Gillian, the
Oh, no
beautiful
kidding.
actress Anne Gillian,
Yeah.
who is my best friend.
Yeah.
And we figured maybe they're related in some way. And you know what was interesting?
Huh.
When President Adamkus was here, I don't ever remember anybody from our security here looking at the house or checking what everybody was eating or anything else. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
But when President Nauseda was here just a little while ago,
Yeah.
security came the day before. They were with him. I put them in another room and they had lunch, but they went through everything and kind of checked everything just to be sure. And I'm assuming that this whole Ukraine crisis maybe has more emphasis on security for the heads of state, you know?
It doesn't help, especially when you have a Russian leader who will put nuclear material in people's underwear and have them accidentally fall out of hotel rooms. Yeah, it doesn't help you feel safe. Of course, your home is wonderful, and I really appreciate you having me here. It's such a neat thing to be able to do. So, if nothing else, I'm glad to share the same space with the former presidents of Lithuania. I wanted to bring my family in a little bit because you know the efforts that you had to go to bring your grandmother here.
Yes.
And how hard it was to survive the Soviet occupation of these areas, or the Soviet government. My grandfather and great grandfather on that side, or maybe it's great and great great. Either way, that's it. It's just them. And then the tree is gone after that because all of their history, everything has been wiped away. And so we only just have these little glimpses, like maybe an article in the paper or maybe a picture. But it's so easy to lose track of who we are because there's so much evil in the world. And in this case, it's the Soviets, whatever country that has done this. It's remarkable how short and how tenuous our hold on good things can be.
Well, the old statement is absolutely true. If we don't learn from history, we're bound to repeat it.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified of where we're going. Our young people, hell, the young people in Lithuania don't know how their grandparents were shipped off to Siberia for no reason at all.
Right.
But they wanted to repatriate and fill Lithuania with Russians, and preferably of the communist system, to make any of those countries malleable to the communist regime. And our young people don't know that. They don't know diddly squat here in America of how tough it was for the European countries, and especially those who happened to fall under communism, what they had to live through. Talk to somebody and their grandparents from Poland or Latvia or Czechoslovakia or Romania or anywhere where communist rule took over. How the hell were they supposed to survive? And those that did tried to teach their youngsters, but as soon as it's comfortable, we forget everything.
We do. I had on my show a while back a SEAL named Drago Dazarian. He's Polish, and so he's like, yeah, I lived it. I had these problems.
Yes.
And you are put into prison and you are held back, and his whole face. I mean, he lived it, and then he turned himself into a SEAL, and he's just wonderfully successful guy because he came here and he got away from that stuff. So it's true there. I also remember when the wall came down and the Baltics erupted, and we all got to learn like Sharunas Marcellonis from the Golden State Warriors. And you're like, what is this crazy place? And it's like the Lithuanians had been bottled up for so long. They weren't allowed to be Lithuanian.
Yes,
it was remarkable to experience that. And that's only 30 years ago that happened.
That's right. Well, the streets in Lithuania, when I first went in 1964, were not named Lithuanian names. They were named Russian names.
Yes.
Lithuanian was the secondary language. Everybody and the kids in school learned Russian. And it was, let's put it this way. My own eyes saw that it was a dark, bleak, gray, unhappy, filled with drunks, because it was the only warmth you could get, was to throw down, some home brewed booze.
Yeah.
It was an awful, awful place.
Yeah.
Rude inhospitable, and just gray in every way. And when I went back 20 years later, after the young people had died trying to free Lithuania of the Soviets, it glowed.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place to go now. It's green, it's beautiful, it's loving, it's welcoming, it's hospitable, it's smiling, it's fabulous. It's a beautiful place. It reminds me of some of our eastern states, like Maine and New Hampshire. It's so pretty, and very, very green. And what a great place to go visit now. And I couldn't have said that, that many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. In your lifetime, you've seen a lot of change. Heck, in my lifetime, I've seen a lot of change. When the wall came down, and I was just old enough to start to understand it, but you'd only kind of saw it represented in movies like Moscow on the Hudson or something.
Oh, yes.
And so you didn't really know. But, if you're younger than, so this is an example. So I'm talking to these high school kids on Monday, and I say, there's a possibility that maybe I'll have Sean Penn on my show at some point. It's a potential thing. Who knows? And not all of them know who Sean Penn is.
Uh-huh.
And
it's
Sean
amazing.
Penn, and he says, if he did a movie right now, it would be like, of course, this is going to be a massive boost. He's as successful as you can be right now.
Yes.
But in the young kids' minds, they just don't have access to all that stuff and where they consume things, on TikTok. And it's just how they do it. It's not bad, but they don't have access to these lessons. And how do we change that? Or what do you think?
I was just going to comment on, I salute the Jewish community everywhere.
Right.
Because they do not let us forget, in film, in theater, in writing, in song, in dance, in opera, in whatever, what the frig the Holocaust was.
Yeah.
They try to remind us. Well, now I keep saying, what in hell is wrong with all of us Christians?
Yeah.
We don't make a point. They talk about 6 million Jews were killed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 30 million under Stalin and the communist system.
Yeah.
And we don't feature that.
Yeah.
So I admire the Jews because they make a point of not letting the youngsters forget, of bringing it up.
Yeah.
And we don't. And we have to get it together and say, this is what communism does. Yeah. It killed 30 million people in the gulags and the camps and the death squads. Yeah. And my family was deported from Lithuania in exactly one of those cattle cars that you see the Jews being sent to extermination camps in. My grandfather died en route to Siberia in one of those cattle cars, because when they took off his boots, his legs were frozen. When they took off his boots, the flesh came off the bone in the boots.
Yeah.
With that, and he died en route. This is something we don't talk about.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why don't we have great films? Yes, we had Zhivago, but that's a long time ago.
Who's watched that? It's too long. Yeah. Yeah. Also, the Chaldean people, the Assyrian people. These are ancient people that are just about wiped off the earth. They only are just barely hanging on to existence, and we don't care. We don't care.
Well, somebody has to come along, and the big movie makers, and do it for those people that need it. And above all, well, I'm glad that there have been some wonderful films done about veterans.
Yeah.
That wake us up to the facts. And I think that's one of the reasons why Gary Sinise is so popular, because it was, and his organization, of course, is titled, his sergeant, or whatever his name was. I've forgotten.
Yeah.
In the
Lieutenant
movie.
Dan.
Lieutenant Dan Band and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a remarkable thing, and I'm glad I've had you on the show here. And I do want to end on a positive note. We've talked about all kinds of things, but it is incredible what the Thalians do and have done and continue to do. The show is this Saturday, and you said it's at the
Brentwood Country Club,
right?
And it's going to be fabulous. Do it fast if you're going to do it, because I think we're almost sold out. Thank you, God.
Yeah.
We just got another table in, and I'm trying to figure out where to put it.
Yeah.
You know,
Double deck them.
Yeah, exactly. But it'll be a beautiful party, and you know, the price will include dinner and drinks and cocktails and entertainment and dancing and music, and it'll be just great fun, and it all goes to a very good cause.
And Rich Little is going to be there, and he's hilarious. As we
Oh,
all
I
know.
love him
Yeah.
so. Yes, he's my good friend. He never turns me down.
Yeah, he is super nice. Well, is there anything else you want to say in closing? Otherwise, we'll wrap this up.
I just want to say in closing that I think that you have a guardian angel that has kind of put his or her arms around you
Yeah.
and said, keep doing what you're doing, Pete,
Yeah.
because you're letting a lot of people know that they should teach their youngsters and their youngsters' that the system of communism, as I said, reads well on paper, but it is not anything you want in your life in person.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly.